Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. Oops, we fell off. Let's try and set this up again. It's Wednesday, the 25th of February 2026, and the time is 1:19 p.m. It's hot, very humid this morning, very humid it was, but it seems to have cooled down a tiny bit because we have a bit more of a breeze. And the boys were inside all day yesterday, so I thought I'll bring them out in the garden, which makes them very happy. And Kermie's running up and down his perch, twittering away, and Bo's just sitting up there like a king of the castle, purviewing his entire estate. So it's actually quite lovely. Just one moment. I brought my Ventolin out in case I need it. I might have a couple of puffs actually. I feel already a bit congested. Right, so here we are, people of Earth. Another day in paradise. I'm waiting on my farmer's pack box of fruit and veg to arrive. Don't know when that's coming, but I've had to cancel any future boxes for a few months because I'm struggling financially, and it's not a lot, it's $50 a month extra, but I figure I'm getting that and still buying some vegetables as well, so it's just driven the cost of my food bill up. So I'll have to try and limit expense just for a few months, see if it makes any difference. Probably won't. I'm up against, a brick wall, struggling for my survival, people of Earth, but it's always been that way, even in childhood. I was struggling for my feckin' survival, although at least there was a roof over my head that I didn't have to pay for, and food in my belly that technically I didn't pay for, although I did because, my mother took all the child allowance and what have you, and, whatever, no resentment there. She did promise that I'd inherit through her though, and that was a bald-faced lie right to the end. When she robbed me of valuable land in Waiheke Island when I was 14, it was a bridge too far, but I was a young teen, and what did I know about the value of land and money? Nothing. I didn't even realise the enormity of it until actually it came to the wool dispute, and I thought, oh yes, that was another thing my own mother robbed me of. Nothing in writing but a gentleman's handshake with my grandfather, Alfred Abraham Phillips. Well, goes to prove my mother was no lady or gentleman for that matter. Couldn't even keep her word on that. People's greed is unbelievable. And of course it's cost me my daughter's love because they blame me for the financial loss that they would have ultimately inherited through me. Well, it's not my fucking fault. I was raised by monsters. I've spent most of the morning, since I got up at 10 a.m, on a Facebook group, something about hermetics, and we were all discussing COVID and if people regretted getting, the COVID vaccinations, and if so, why. And I went through, as I do, assiduously. It doesn't matter what topic I'm landed on of interest. I go through all the comments section because I learn a lot that way about what's actually going on in our world and how it's infecting, well, that too, but how it's affecting individual people, and their individual responses to things, and I'm pleased to see the majority of the people in the comment section have woken up to the enormity of how we were duped by our global governments and the attendant health issues and the brainwashing. There were a few poor souls in there that I could see were still confused and or brainwashed, so I don't comment and I don't put likes or dislike, any reactions to that. I just let them have their reality. If that's how they preserve their body, mind and spirit by living in confusion and denial, then, just let them be. But it really feels like a parallel universe. It really feels like I'm living through some kind of hellscape where CERN has smashed the particles together and created different divergent timelines, the haves and the have-nots, and the people who were courageous and said no, and the people that weren't so courageous but were terrified of not being able to provide for their families, so we can comprehend and have compassion and understanding for that. And then there's the people that still think it was a marvellous idea and they're glad they went along with it. It really is an alternate reality, an alternate universe to the one I live in, that I choose to live in. But in an ironic way, gifted by my poverty living in housing commission, a prisoner in a way of reliant on a disability pension, I was protected. It's a backhanded gift and a position of privilege that comes in extraordinary ways because, ordinary working people that had to go along with that to keep their jobs, to keep an income coming in, were put in very real danger of their future health and that of their future babies and children as well. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing and chilling and very fragile making. But anyway, as always, I spoke out against what we were put through as a species and what I was put through individually with the viciousness in the dance spaces is one fine example, being othered and marginalised and isolated because of my courage to say, no, hell no, I won't go along with that. So it's cost me dear. It's cost me my eldest daughter, who's joined my youngest daughter in a long estrangement. It's cost me Jared and Lynn and various other people too that I won't mention by name because ultimately they were fair weather friends and temporary friends and neither here nor there in my emotional landscape really, although I did grieve the loss of that former love interest in April 2025, just before my birthday. That was savage. But they don't blip on my radar. Who are they? Just people that had no real regard or respect or care for me, so weren't actually real authentic friends. But the grief of losing my daughter, well, she and I parted ways in September 2023. Really spiraled. It affected my bladder even worse. I was already struggling at that point in time. Really spiraled me under. And so here we are now, February 2026, and I feel like, that grief is never, ever going to go away because, I loved both my daughters actually. Didn't always have the most ideal of relationships, but they were loved. And you can't ever get back, your own child, your adult child, when they look at you the way my daughter looked at me when I presented at the art gallery to go to the presents exhibition, you can never get that back. That loss of soul, loss of love and loss of respect, that look of contempt in her eyes, just because I do what I've always done since infancy, survived and spoken out against draconian fascistic evil, because I'd already lived through most of that by the time I was 7 years old, and I wasn't going to go along with any more of that nonsense, not willingly, not by choice, nor would I be silenced. And that's what's made me public enemy number one, and it's sad and it's tragic, but in a way I'm okay with that. I saw today in that comment section of that group on Facebook today how many people think like me now, have regretted their decisions, and are forging ahead with their lives, trying to heal their body, minds and spirit from the onslaught of the last 6 years. And more power and more love gifted to them for finally joining me in the realisation, the actualisation that it was a deliberate, orchestrated act, and life-threatening in many aspects for many people. Not everyone was affected, depended again on the individual and what particular health issues or mental health issues or spiritual issues they were barely surviving. But I firmly believe in the rights of every individual to heal themselves and have their own body autonomy and make their own choices. Even if they were choices I did not agree with, I begged my daughter and my best friends to not comply with that regime, but they were convinced that they had to do it, and there was nothing that could be done. I had to sit back and wait for the fallout, and the fallout ended up being an act of falling out. It's here, it's real, it's no longer paranoia or fear-based, but I'm living it. So I was, I don't know what's wrong with my voice, probably the ventilator. I was somewhat comforted to see other people that also saw through the evils of the last pandemic, and we all kind of concurred that we won't be inclined to fall into line with that again. So, blessed be to my bright, courageous ones out there in the wider planet and the world, and may we all merit to be positively healed from all the ghastly horror, in my case, of the last 60 years, almost 61 years, and may we find our people who see us and love us and align with us, who comprehend what the emotional, spiritual, physical, mental costs were and are, and who love us without turning to rancid hatred and contempt. Amen Vasila. Because it is a prayer and a wish, and I don't know if it will ever be fulfilled for me that I'll ever find my tribe, because in real terms, haven't been able to find that tribe in 61 years. I'll be 60 in April, so so dark thoughts, but actual, truthful, lived reality thoughts that are not paranoia, not imaginary, and not manic denial. No amount of manic denial can hide us from the gripping, gritting reality now. And like I say, there were a few people in that comment section that I could see were supportive of my comments, showing support for them also, because we are all human and we all have a right to live our lives to the best of our abilities and choose our best outcomes for our health when and if possible, and when and if we have not been altered or interfered with by the powers that be, Big Pharma, and the globalist corporatocracies that enabled, and the military-industrial complex, because it was a coercion and a psychological operation. So it's a very courageous thing for even one person to stand up against that, which I did do, but I was shadow banned and silenced on all social media platforms. And even now there's probably a big black mark against my name, and I'm probably a walking target, but I stand by the truth, no matter what, no matter who. And I want others to see that when we all join together and stand up for, with, of, by truth, we indeed do heal ourselves, because our lives have meaning and purpose and make sense in a world of nonsense, lies and deception and misinformation and disinformation, which ironically was the very thing that our governments accused people like me of, the daring to survive and to say no. Of course, going to hospitals for me is very precarious now, because I'm well aware, dating as far back as early childhood, when I was spanked roundly on my bare bottom for being frightened when I was sent to hospital for that big lump on my head that I had the Sunday school gate smashed into my skull when I was 6 or 7. So I was systemically abused by a nurse, even at that very fragile age, which was contemporaneously occurring at the same time I was being sexually molested by my godfather. So I knew at 6 years old that I was not safe, even in hospitals, from predators or sadistic, unkind people in the form of a nurse. It's actually a great gift that woman gave me, that fucking monster. Because if it had not been for that, when COVID came along, I might have been naive and thinking that the world is peopled by good, kind, noble people in the form of medical uniforms too. But I had that reinforced from the age of 6 right up to my gallbladder surgery, when I was being abused while being wheeled into the surgery, actually, by the red-headed young anaesthetist that wanted to fight me about the fact that I could die with my respiratory issues under the effects of the anaesthetic. And in actual fact, although he stressed me to the gills being wheeled into the surgery, and I was almost at the point of getting up off the bloody bed and walking away, but I knew if I didn't have that gallbladder surgery I was going to die anyway. So it was a no-win situation. And he was right. I did die briefly after that surgery when the tramadol they gave me for pain relief or whatever effects did shut off my breathing, and I was briefly in the light. And I was sent back with the admonition, the very words said to me by, I didn't see the entity or spirit, but the very words were, we're sending you back to a hellscape of epic proportions. And that was on the 25th of June 2019. And here we are now. What's the date today, did I say? Is it the 24th, did I say, or the 25th? 25th of February 2026. So, 5 years and 8 months later, it truly has been a hellscape of epic proportions that I had to carefully shuffle from one foot to the other on the back foot, doing my characteristic hobbit dance, stomping my outrage and my fury at times. I had to carefully recalibrate and navigate myself through, ably supported by my former friends and my beautiful, handsome, talented, worthy, courageous psychiatrist who stood with me through all those years, those very dark, turgid years, knowing that I was alone, I live alone, reasonably isolated, and that it was a spiritual war and a fight for my basic human rights and my body autonomy and my agency and my will to thrive. Probably, if truth be known, without his support, I wouldn't be here. I would have unalived myself. But here we are, fighting on as I do every day with my own stoic determination, because I know one thing: I have just as much right to live and thrive and prosper and exist in the world and have love as any other human being on this planet. It's just a tragedy that all that love was torn from me by other people's alterations of their DNA and hatred and contempt for me. It really is beyond foul. Beyond foul. An evil that is almost unspeakable. And yet, here I am, still speaking out. It's a hill I will die on. My truth and my courage and my integrity. When everyone else ceded their souls and their integrity, everyone else except my psychiatrist, I guess, maybe a few other people around me, I held strong. And I take great pride in that, actually. I don't know even where some of that strength come from. Sometimes it really was a form of manic denial, as my psychiatrist used to say to me, but I proved that I was capable of loving beyond all reason and, if nothing else, surviving. So yes. There's a big dragonfly flying up in the sky, and the crow. Hello, Mr. Crow. Hello, you've just arrived. Where have you been? Have you been visiting other people's gardens? There's some cracked corn in the seed mix for you, but I've got no meat. No meat for you. Oh, he's happy. He's very happy. Surviving in Titania's realm in his sacred space garden, loving the rest of my life because what else have I got going on, babies? Anyway, let us continue with chapter 3, the Garden of the Gods. Was chapter 3, yes. This is part 2 because I had to break it off yesterday. I got too tired, and I have to honour my own body impulses, otherwise I tip into hypomania if I get myself overly exhausted and overly distressed. I had a lot of anxiety yesterday, and I was in a deep distress because what actually happened was I got this mad urge, almost kind of a hypomania, to buy some groceries, and I don't get paid till pension day on Tuesday. And what happened was, the money got taken out of my bank account, but I wanted it to go on ZipPay, but I hadn't pressed the right button, or it just happened so quickly I couldn't prevent the payment from going out. So then I spent the rest of the afternoon in a trauma state, freaking out because the groceries were bought in good faith. I can't cancel the order. In fact, they were about to be delivered. And my rego goes out tomorrow, so I'm going to be overdrawn on my bank account by quite a lot of money. So I was quite distressed and was trying to find ways to circumvent that. So I rang Coles and they couldn't help me, and I can't get hold of the Uber Eats, so it's a problem. But then I've backtracked now, as I was paying it through PayPal, and I can change the PayPal to ZipPay, but it's probably too late for that payment yesterday. So in future I'll make sure those kind of payments go on through ZipPay so I don't have that distress again. But it made me feel very fragile and realise how close to the bone I live financially and how quickly I can be thrown into crisis. And then I put a note on Facebook to see if anyone could lend me $100 just to cover me for the week. No one replied. And then I thought, I guess I felt ashamed and embarrassed that I have to even ask for that kind of help on Facebook, that I've got no friends that I can go to now in an emergency. And I felt so distressed and beaten down by it. I thought, fuck it. I took the status update down and thought, I'll just have to be in overdraft. What's the worst they can do to me? Extract blood out of my veins? And it's only a shortfall of about, I worked it out, it's actually less than $100. It's only about $70, so it's not the end of the world, is it? But I was so distressed. You should have seen me. I was a mess. Anyway, and I had actually bought $142 worth of groceries, but there were a few items they didn't have in stock, so it got reduced to 96. So I guess that was lucky in a way. I would have been even worse off, even in further debt for the week. Anyway, I've made my mind up. I'm going to pay off my ZipPay, which should achieve that in the near future, maybe in another month or so. And I'm going to, that extra $100 that goes on Zip Pay each fortnight, I'm going to have to be very disciplined and try and put that aside in a separate account for times like this when I run short of food and go into panic mode, because it shouldn't be happening. But I've noticed I've been having to spend a lot more for food in the past month or two, and been blowing my budget a bit, and some of it is because of my own folly wanting to buy a few treats and things, and some of it's just the cost of food. It's just markedly increased. So yesterday I spent the whole afternoon and evening in a state of absolute distress and panic, thinking I can't survive on this planet anymore, and even intermittently contemplating that I may have to unalive myself, simply because if I can't afford to feed myself, that's serious, people. It's very serious. But then I realised that I was just in a trauma state, and that everything would be okay. But it took me hours and hours and hours to quell my nervous system. So this is how I exist in the world, people. I have to say I was very good. I didn't go and take a Valium or a benzo to quell my nervous system, because I thought, I live like this all the time. I'm not going to have to rely on medications just because I make a mistake on the internet and pay out of my bank account instead of Zip Pay. I'm not going to further punish myself by taking on a toxic load. Yes, I would have been a lot calmer, but I just need to try to manage my emotions and wear my few mistakes that I make like that. But financial mistakes for me are life-threatening, because it's a backward slide and it takes me months to recover from it, emotionally and financially. So I kind of had a massive overreaction yesterday, and it's chilling to know that there's no one to assist me or help me anymore. Part of that is everyone's kind of in the same boat financially. We've all been greatly harmed and damaged in the last 6 years, affecting even our financial resources. And it's fragile making. It's fragile making. And, you know, it's not for want of being lazy or not trying to achieve, because I had no success with my silversmithing, and when I get obsessed with that, I can work very hard at it, but I can't sustain it because of my anxiety and CPTSD and mental health issues. So this is not a pity party. I'm not asking anyone for assistance or money or anything like that. I'll soldier my way through it, like I did with COVID. I'll soldier my way through this as well. But it's just came to me as a great realisation of how very vulnerable I really am now. No children, adult children to support me, no husband, no partner, no lover, and no friends. None. All gone. So, anyway, I really don't know what the future holds for me, but to be fair, no one does. And I kind of held it together and got myself through. And let us begin. We're 34 minutes in. It's enough meandering about my very fraught, difficult life circumstances, which have always been fraught and difficult, so it's not new. It's not new at all. Let us begin reading part 2 of chapter 3, The Garden of the Gods. He arrived, unfortunately, in time for lunch. and by the end of the meal, without really trying, he had succeeded in alienating everybody, including the dogs. Synchronicity. Well, my alienation was to be on the right side of history and to protect Homo sapiens sapiens as a species. So my alienation was for a noble and worthy cause, people of Earth. So I regret nothing. Even if I die of fucking starvation or freak the fuck out one day and hang myself from that big tree, it'll still be worth it, because I fought long and hard. Not just for myself, but ultimately for all of you too. Even though that might sound batshit crazy to the uninitiated, that is my reality and my hill that I'm standing on and prepared to die on. It was, in its way, quite a tour de force to be able to irritate 5 people of such different character, apparently without even being aware of doing so, inside 2 hours of arrival. We're referring here to the French count that said everything was better in France. Well, perhaps he's right about that. I doubt it though. This book was written in the late 30s or 40s, and nothing is better anywhere in any part of the world now. There's no safe place to go. Trust me, I've considered just getting on a plane and going to anywhere but here, but there's no point, because there's nowhere safe for me now. And I've known that pre the COVIDian insanity of the regime. I've known that for decades too. During the course of lunch, he said, having just eaten a souffle as delicate as a cloud, in which were embedded the pale pink bodies of freshly caught shrimps, that it was obvious that Mother's chef was not French. Ooh, nasty. Having discovered that Mother was the chef, he showed no embarrassment, but merely said that she would then be glad of his presence, for it would enable him to give her some advice in the culinary arts. Leaving her speechless with rage at his audacity, in Yiddish we call that chutzpah, he turned his attention to Larry, to whom he vouchsafed the information that the only good writers were French. At the mention of Shakespeare, he merely shrugged. Le petit poseur, he said. To Leslie, he offered the information that anyone who was interested in hunting must assuredly have the instincts of a criminal. In any case, it was well known that the French produced the best guns, swords, and other offensive weapons. To Margot, he gave the advice that it was a woman's job to keep beautiful for men, and, in particular, not to be greedy and eat too many things that would ruin the figure. As Margot was suffering from a certain amount of puppy fat at that time and was on a rigid diet in consequence, this information was not at all well received. He condemned himself in my eyes by calling the dogs village curs, and compared them unfavourably with his selection of Labradors, Setters, retrievers and spaniels, all French bred, of course. Furthermore, he was puzzled why I kept so many pets, all of which were uneatable. In France, we only shoot this kind of thing, he said. Kermie, are you talking, Kermie? Are you talking, Betty? You're a happy boy now you're in the garden. I was sitting so depressed, huddled up at the end of the perch, side by side, like two little bookends looking at me like this. Like, that's it. We're going in the garden. It's for their mental health, and it's good for Mama's mental health too. Isn't it, my boys? Sunshine and happiness and freedom to the birdies and the people. Small wonder then that after lunch, when he went upstairs to change, the family were quivering like a suppressed volcano. Only Mother's golden rule that a guest must not be insulted on the first day kept us in check. But such was the state of our nerves that if anyone had started to whistle the Marseillaise, we would have torn him from limb to limb. You see, said Mother accusingly to Larry, this is what comes of letting people you don't know send people you don't know to stay. The man's insufferable. Well, he's not so bad, said Larry feebly, trying to argue against an attitude that he agreed with. I thought some of his comments were valid. Which? Asked Mother ominously. Yes, which? Asked Margot, quivering. Well, said Larry vaguely, I thought that souffle was a bit on the rich side. And Margot was beginning to look a bit circular. Beast, said Margot, and burst into tears. Now that's quite enough, Larry, said Mother. How are we going to endure this scented lounge lizard of yours for another week? I don't know. Well, I've got to put up with him too, don't forget, said Larry, irritated. Well, he's your friend. I mean, your friend's friend. I mean, well, whatever he is, he's yours, said Mother. And it's up to you to keep him out of the way as much as possible. Or I'll pepper his ass for him, said Leslie, the smelly little... Leslie, said Mother, that's quite enough. Well, he is, said Leslie doggedly. I know he is, dear, but you shouldn't say so, Mother explained. Well, I'll try, said Larry, but don't blame me if he comes down to the kitchen to give you a cookery lesson. I'm warning you, said Mother mutinously. If that man sets foot in my kitchen, I shall walk out. I shall go. I shall go and be a hermit, suggested Larry. No, I shall go and stay in an hotel until he's gone, said Mother, uttering her favourite threat. And this time, I really mean it. To give Larry his due, he did strive manfully with Count Rossignol for the next few days. He took him to the library and museum in town, He showed him the Kaiser's summer palace with all its repulsive statuary. He even took him to the top of the highest point in Corfu, Mount Pantocrator, and I'm not sure. Pantocrator. I like Pantocrator a bit better because it sort of sounds Greek. It's all Greek to me, people of Earth. And showed him the view. I shouldn't laugh, it gives me asthma. Laughter is not always the best medicine. Oh dear goddess. Right. Happy bow. Are we going to Mount Pantocrator with the bow? He says, no, Mama. We're sitting on the perch in Brisbane, Australia, while you laugh so much you give yourself an asthma attack. Okay, boys. It's all a bit mad, I know. Just have another quick puff. I've been so good not needing Ventolin for about a year. All of a sudden, it's creeping back up on me. Creeping. The Count compared the library unfavourably with the Bibliothèque Nationale, said that the museum was not a patch on the Louvre, noted the Kaiser's palace was inferior in size, design and furnishings to the cottage he had for his head gardener, and finally observed that the view from Pantocrator was not to be mentioned in the same breath as any view to be seen from any high spot in France. In other words, he should just bloody well stay home and not bother to travel, since he finds nothing as pleasurable or beautiful as his home country. It goes beyond patriotism. It's some kind of narrow-minded, myopic narcissism, isn't it? It really is. Wow. It is what it is, people of Earth. Look at you with your little green funny legs. Oh dear goddess. Right. The man's intolerable, said Larry, refreshing himself with brandy in Mother's bedroom, where we had all repaired to escape the Count's company. He's got an obsession with France. I can't think why he ever left the place. He even thinks their telephone service is the best in the world. And he's so humorless about everything. One would think he were a Swede. Never mind, dear, said Mother. It's not for long now. I'm not sure I shall last the course, said Larry. So far, about the only thing he hasn't claimed for France is God. But we wouldn't believe. But they probably... Wait a minute. But they probably believe in him better in France. Leslie pointed out. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do something really nasty to him, said Margot wistfully. Something really horrible? No, Margot, said Mother firmly. We've never done anything nasty to anyone that's stayed with us. I mean, except as a joke or by accident, and we're not going to start. We'll just have to put up with him. After all, it's only for a few more days. It will soon pass." "Dear God," said Larry suddenly, "I just remembered. It's the bloody christening on Monday." "I do wish you wouldn't swear so much," said Mother. "What's that got to do with it?" "Can you imagine taking him to a christening?" asked Larry. "No, he'll just have to go off somewhere on his own." "I don't think we ought to let him go wandering off on his own," said Mother, as if she were talking about a dangerous animal. "I mean, he might meet one of our friends." We all sat and thought about the problem. "Why doesn't Jerry take him somewhere?" said Leslie suddenly. "After all, he doesn't want to come to a boring christening." "That's a brainwave," said Mother delightedly. "The very thing." Immediately, all my instincts for self-preservation came to the fore. I said that I did want to go to the christening. I had been looking forward to it. It was the only chance I would ever have of seeing Larry being a godfather. And he might drop the baby or something, and I would miss it. And anyway, the Count didn't like snakes and tortoises and birds and things, so what could I do with him? There was silence while the family, like a jury, examined the strength of my case. "I know. Take him out in your boat," suggested Margot brightly. "Excellent," said Larry. "I'm sure he's got a straw hat and a striped blazer among his sartorial effects. Perhaps we can borrow a banjo." "It's a very good idea," said Mother. "After all, it's only for a couple of hours, dear. You surely wouldn't mind that." I stated in no uncertain terms that I would mind it very much indeed. "I tell you what," said Larry, "we're having a fish drive down at the lake on Monday. If I get the chap who's in charge to let you go, will you take the Count?" I wavered, for I had long wanted to see a fish drive. I knew I was going to have the Count, for the afternoon, so it was simply a matter of what I could get out of it. "And then we can see about that new butterfly cabinet you want," said Margot. "And Margot and I will give you some money for books," said Larry, generously anticipating Margot's participation in the bribery. "And I'll give you that clasp knife you wanted," said Leslie. I agreed. If I had to put up with the Count for an afternoon, I was at least being fairly compensated. That evening, at dinner, Mother explained the situation and went into such detailed eulogies about the fish drives that you would have thought she had personally invented them. "Is eating?" asked the Count. Yes, said Mother. "The fish are called cephalias, and they're delicious." "No, is eating on the lake?" asked the Count. "Is eating with sun?" Oh, I see," said Mother. "Yes, it's very hot. Be sure to wear a hat." "We go in the enfant's yacht?" asked the Count, who liked to get things clear. "Yes," said Mother. The Count outfitted himself for the expedition in pale blue linen trousers, elegant chestnut bright shoes, a white silk shirt with a blue and gold cravat knotted carelessly at the throat, and an elegant yachting cap. While the Bootle bum trinket was ideal for my purposes, I would have been the first to admit that she had none of the refinements of an ocean-going yacht. And this the Count was quick to perceive when I led him down to the canal in the maze of old Venetian salt pans below the house, where I had the boat moored. "Is this yacht?" he asked in surprise and some alarm. I said that indeed this was our craft, stalwart and stable, and he should note a flat bottom to make it easier to walk about in. Whether he understood me, I do not know. Perhaps he thought the Bootle bum trinket was merely the dinghy in which he was to be rowed out to the yacht. But he climbed in delicately, spread his handkerchief fastidiously over the seat, and sat down gingerly. I leapt aboard and with the aid of a pole started punting the craft down the canal, which at this point was some 20 feet wide and 2 feet deep. I congratulated myself on the fact that only the day before I had decided that the Bootle bum trinket was starting to smell almost as pungently as the Count, for over a period a lot of dead shrimps, seaweed and other debris had collected under her boards. I had sunk her in some 2 feet of seawater and given her bilges a thorough cleaning, so that she was sparkling clean and smelt beautifully of sun-hot tar and paint and salt water. The old salt pans lay along the edge of the brackish lake, forming a giant chessboard with the cross hatching of these placid canals, some as narrow as a chair, some 30 feet wide. Most of these waterways were only a couple of feet deep, but below the water lay an almost unplumbable depth of fine black silt. The Bootle bum trinket, by virtue of her shape and flat bottom, could be propelled up and down these inland waterways with comparative ease, for one did not have to worry about gusts of wind or a sudden bouncing cluster of wavelets, two things that always made her a bit alarmed. But the disadvantage of the canals was that they were fringed on each side with tall, rustling bamboo breaks, which, while providing shade, shut out the wind, so that the atmosphere was still, dark, hot, and as richly odoriferous as a manure heap. For a time, the artificial smell of the Count vied with the sense of nature, and eventually nature won. "Il smell," the Count pointed out. "In France, the water is hygiene." I said it would not be long before we left the canal and were out on the lake, where there would be no smell. "Is eating," was the Count's next discovery, mopping his face and moustache with a scent-drenched handkerchief. "Is eating much." His pale face had, as a matter of fact, turned a light shade of heliotrope. I was just about to say that that problem too would be overcome once we reached the open lake, when, to my alarm, I noticed something wrong with the Bootle bum trinket. She had settled sluggishly in the brown water and hardly moved to my punting. For a moment I could not imagine what was wrong with her. We had not run aground, and I knew that there were no sandbanks in this canal. Then suddenly I noticed the swirl of water coiling up over the boards in the bottom of the boat. Surely, I thought, she could not have sprung a leak. Fascinated, I watched the water rise to engulf the bottom of the oblivious Count's shoes. I suddenly realized what must have happened. When I had cleaned out the bilges, I had, of course, removed the bung in the bum trinket's bottom to let the fresh sea water in. Apparently I had not replaced it with enough care, and now the canal water was pouring into the bilges. My first thought was to pull up the boards, find the bung and replace it, but the Count was now sitting with his feet in about 2 inches of water, and it seemed imperative to turn the Bootle bum trinket towards the bank while I could still manoeuvre a trifle and get my exquisite passenger on shore. I did not mind being deposited in the canal by the Bootle bum trinket. After all, I was always in and out of the canals like a water rat in pursuit of water snakes, terrapins, frogs and other small fry. But I knew that the Count would look askance at gambolling 2 feet of water and an undetermined amount of mud. His beautiful shoes. I put that in because, shoes. My efforts to turn the leaden, waterlogged boat towards the bank were superhuman. Gradually I felt the dead weight of the boat responding, and her bows turning sluggishly towards the shore. Inch by inch, my battery's going low, by the goddess. We'll have to move inside. Inch by inch, I eased her towards the bamboos, and we were within 10 feet of the bank when the Count noticed what was happening. "Mon Dieu!" he cried shrilly. "We are submerged. My shoe is submerged. The boat, she have sunk." I briefly stopped poling to soothe the Count. I told him that there was no danger. All he had to do was to sit still until I got him to the bank. "My shoe! Regardez my shoe!" he cried, pointing at his now dripping and discoloured footwear with such an expression of outrage that it was all I could do not to giggle. And on that note, I'm moving us inside so I can plug us in, people of Earth. Plug us in. Power to the people. Power to the people of Earth. And a certain short, fat hobbit woman in her sacred space garden. I hadn't realised the battery was so low when I started filming. So, it's alright. It's easily remedied, people of Earth. Throw that down. Got to find where my charger is. I believe it's in the living room. It was the last time I had it. Yes. Oh, so hot. So very, very hot. Might be too hot to read in the kitchen. One-handed. Multitask, multitask, multitask. The Queen of the multitasking. What can I say, people of Earth? Yes, it's sweaty and hot in here by all the gods. Right, I'll just grab a glass of water, and I might have to bring the fan in. How am I going to do that? There's nothing left to plug it in. Oh, I just have to soldier it out. Soldier it out, people of Earth, like I do everything. All right. Just grab a little coaster here, and we're cooking on gas. Literally cooking on gas. Right, where were we? A moment, I said to him, and I should have him on dry land. Indeed, if he had done what I had said, this would have been the case, for I had managed to get the Bootle bum trinket to within 6 feet of the bamboos. Just feeling a little bit too low. One moment. Just rearrange the cushions. Yeah, that's better. But the Count was too worried about the state of his shoes, rightly so, they probably cost a fortune. French, exquisite leather shoes were expensive even back in the day. Oh, formidable. Right. But the Count was too worried about the state of his shoes, and this prompted him to do something very silly. In spite of my warning shout, he looked over his shoulder, saw land looming close, got to his feet, and leapt onto the Bootle bum trinket's minute foredeck. His intention was to leap from there to safety when I had manoeuvred the boat a little closer, but he had not reckoned with the Bootle bum trinket's temperament. A placid boat, she had nevertheless a few quirks, and one thing she did not like was anyone standing on her foredeck. She simply gave an odd sort of bucking twist, rather like a trained horse in a cowboy film, and slid you over her shoulder. She did this to the Count now. He fell into the water with a yowl, spread-eagled like an ungainly frog, and his proud yachting cap floated towards the bamboo roots, while he thrashed about in a porridge of water and mud. Oh mon Dieu, his beautiful silk shirt and his cravat and his linen trousers. Oh, le pauvre, le pauvre. I was filled with a mixture of alarm and delight. I was delighted that the Count had fallen in, though I knew my family would never believe that I had not engineered it. But I was alarmed in the way he was thrashing about. To try to stand up is an instinctive reaction when finding one is in shallow water, but in this case the effort only made one sink deeper into the glutinous mud. Once Larry had fallen into one of these canals while out shooting, and had got himself so deeply embedded that it required the united efforts of Margot, Leslie and myself to extricate him. If the Count got himself wedged in the canal bottom, I would not have the strength to extricate him single-handed, and by the time I got help, the Count might well have disappeared altogether beneath the gleaming mud. I abandoned ship and leapt into the canal to help him. I knew how to walk in mud, and anyway, only weighed a quarter of what the Count weighed, so I did not sink in so far. I shouted to him to keep still until I got him. "Merde," said the Count. That's French for shit, proving that he was at least keeping his mouth above water. He tried to get up once, but at the terrible gobbling clutch of the mud, uttered a despairing cry like a bereaved seagull and lay still. Indeed, he was so frightened of the mud that when I reached him and tried to pull him shorewards, he screamed and shouted and accused me of trying to push him in deeper. He was so absurdly childlike that I had a fit of the giggles, and this, of course, only made him worse. He had relapsed into French, which he was speaking with the rapidity of a machine gun, so, with my tenuous command of the language, I was unable to understand him. Eventually, I got my unmannerly laughter under control, once more seized him under the armpits and started to drag him shorewards. Then it suddenly occurred to me how ludicrous our predicament would seem to an onlooker, a 12-year-old boy trying to rescue a 6-foot man. And I was overcome again and sat down in the mud and laughed till I cried. "Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?" screamed the Count, trying to look over his shoulder at me. "You no laughing, you pulling. Vite, vite." Vite means quickly. Eventually, swallowing great hiccups of laughter, I started to pull at the Count again and eventually got him fairly close to the shore. Then I left him and climbed out onto the bank. This provoked another bout of hysteria. "No going away, no going away," he yelled, panic-stricken. "I am sunk, no going away." I ignored him, choosing 7 of the tallest bamboos in the vicinity. I bent them over one by one until their stems splintered but did not snap. Then I twisted them round until they reached the Count and formed a sort of green bridge between him and the shore. Acting on my instructions, he turned on his stomach and pulled himself along until at last he reached dry land. When he eventually got shakily to his feet, he looked as though the lower half of his body had been encased in melting chocolate. Knowing that this glutinous mud could dry hard in record time, I offered to scrape some of it off him with a piece of bamboo. He gave me a murderous look. "Asbestos con," he said vehemently. My espèce means hope. De con, I don't know. The opposite of hope? Pros and cons? Je ne sais quoi. But anyway. My shaky knowledge of the Count's language did not allow me to translate this, but the enthusiasm with which it was uttered led me to suppose that it was worth retaining in my memory. We started to walk home, the Count simmering vitriolically. As I had anticipated, the mud on his legs dried at almost magical speed, and within a short time he looked as though he were wearing a pair of trousers made out of a pale brown jigsaw puzzle. From the back, he reminded me so much of the armour-clad rear of an Indian rhinoceros that I almost got the giggles again. It was unfortunate, perhaps, that the Count and I should have arrived at the front door of the villa just as the huge Dodge, driven by a scowling, barrel-shaped, self-appointed guardian angel, Spiro Hagiopoulos, drew up with the family, flushed with wine in the back of it. Wine. Matter of fact, wouldn't mind if I had some right now. The car came to a halt, and the family stared at the Count with disbelieving eyes. It was Spiro who recovered first. "Gollies, Mrs. Durrells," he said, twisting his massive head round and beaming at Mother. "Master Jerry's fixes the bastards." This was obviously the sentiment of the whole family, but Mother threw herself into the breach. "My goodness, Count," she said in well-simulated tones of horror. "What have you been doing with my son?" The Count was so overcome with the audacity of this remark that he could only look at Mother, open-mouthed. "Jerry, dear," Mother went on, "go and change out of those wet things before you catch cold. There's a good boy." "Good boy," repeated the Count, shrilly and unbelievingly. "C'est un assassin. C'est une espèce de—" "Nana, my dear fellow," said Larry. Espèce. I mixed it up with espère. Espère means hope. Espèce means species of. Still don't know what a con is, but he's a specious little beast is what he was trying to say. There. We got there in the end. Mama T had to remember her pauvre de français and think laterally. "Nana, my dear fellow," said Larry, throwing his arm round the Count's muddy shoulders. "I'm sure it's been a mistake. Come and have a brandy and change your things." Yes. Rest assured that my brother will smart for this. Of course he will be punished." Larry led the vociferous Count into the house, and the rest of the family converged on me. "What did you do to him?" asked Mother. I said I had not done anything. The Count and the Count alone was responsible for his condition. "I don't believe you," said Margot. "You always say that." I protested that had I been responsible, I would be proud to confess. The family were impressed by the logic of this. "It doesn't matter a damn if Jerry did it or not," said Leslie. "It's the end result that counts." "Well, go and get change, dear, said Mother, and then come to my room and tell us all about how you did it. But the affair of the boot or bum trinket did not have the effect that everyone hoped for. The Count stayed on grimly, as if to punish us all, and was twice as offensive as before. However, I had ceased feeling vindictive towards the Count. Whenever I thought of him thrashing about in the canal, I was overcome with helpless laughter that was worth any amount of insults. Furthermore, the Count had unwittingly added a fine new phrase to my French vocabulary. I tried it out one day when I made a mistake in my French composition, and I found it tripped well off the tongue. The effect on my tutor, Monsieur Kralevsky, was, however, very different. He had been pacing up and down the room, hands behind him, looking like a humpbacked gnome in a trance. At my expression, he came to a sudden stop, wide-eyed, looking like a gnome who had just had an electric shock from a toadstool. "What did you say?" he asked in a hushed voice. I repeated the offending phrase. Mr. Kralevsky closed his eyes. His nostrils quivered, and he shuddered. "Where did you hear that?" he asked. I said I had learned it from a Count who was staying with us. "Oh, well, you must never say it again. Do you understand?" Mr. Kralevsky said. "Never again. You must learn that in this life, sometimes even aristocrats let slip an unfortunate phrase in moments of stress. It does not behove us to imitate them." I did see what Kralevsky meant. Falling into a canal for a Count could be called a moment of stress, I supposed. But the saga of the Count was not yet over. A week or so after he had departed, Larry, one morning at breakfast, confessed to feeling unwell. Mother put on her glasses and stared at him critically. "How do you mean, unwell?" she asked. "Not my normal, manly, vigorous self." "Have you got any pains?" "No," Larry admitted. "No actual pains, just a sort of lassitude, a feeling of ennui, a debilitated, drained feeling, as if I had spent the night with Count Dracula, and I feel that for all his faults, our last guest was not a vampire." "Well, you look all right," said Mother, "though we'd better get you looked at. Dr. Andruchelli is on holiday, so I'll have to get Spiro to bring Theodore." "All right," said Larry listlessly, "and you'd better tell Spiro to nip in and alert the British Cemetery." "Larry, don't say things like that," said Mother, getting alarmed. "Now you go up to bed and, for heaven's sake, stop there." If Spiro, listen to my boy, can you hear him? He hasn't done a full-throttled sing-song for a while. If Spiro could be classified as our guardian angel to whom no request was impossible of fulfilment, Dr. Theodore Stefanidis was our oracle and guide to all things. He arrived, sitting sedately in the back of Spiro's Dodge, immaculately dressed in a tweed suit, his Homburg at just the correct angle, his beard twinkling in the sun. Yes, it was really very curious, said Theodore, having greeted us all. I was just thinking to myself how nice a trip was an especially beautiful day. Not too hot, but that sort of thing, you know. And suddenly Spiro turned up at the laboratory. Most fortuitous. I'm so glad that my agony is of benefit to someone, said Larry. What, seems to be the trouble? Asked Theodore, eyeing Larry with interest. Which doctors tended to do that back in the day during my childhood. Eye you with interest as though you were some kind of worm or biological specimen to be poked and prodded at and invalidated and gaslit and denied your reality, but you won't go there, people of Earth. I guess they still kind of do it, they just don't do the peering through the glasses like they used to when I was a child. Anyway, it's where I learnt how to do that from. Mimicry is the highest form of flattery or something like that. Also, my glasses are perpetually loose. I really do need to get them tightened, but why bother? I'm due for new ones next year. But I've had them tightened twice and they keep coming loose. It's really quite irritating, as you can imagine. Anyway, one day I'll find someone that can frame them correctly. My glasses, you understand. Nothing concrete, Larry admitted. Just a general feeling of death being imminent. All my strength seems to have drained away. I've probably, as usual, been giving too much of myself to my family. I don't think that's what's wrong with you, said Mother decisively. I think you've been eating too much, said Margot. What you want is a good diet. What he wants is a little fresh air and exercise, contributed Leslie. If he took the boat out a bit, Yes, well, Theodore will tell us what's wrong, said Mother. All my gums hurt all the time. I wonder if it's radiation. It's this one this time, yes. All looking rather irritated by life. Life is a constant irritant for me, people of Earth. Honestly. I need to go out in a boat somewhere with a gorgeous man giving me the loveliest of times. Would I be irritated then? Possibly, depending on the amount of avoidance and disrespect and bad behaviours. I'm so a gorgeous man, I forgot to mention. A kind and noble and loving and honouring man. I'm just going to go and get something to nibble on because I'm irritated. And I'm hungry. And when I'm hungry, I get irritated. And on it goes. And it's 2:50 p.m. and my last box of veggies have not arrived. I hope they haven't cancelled that order. I'll be livid because I've paid for them. Well, anyway, life goes on, people of Earth. Yes, well, after the suggestion of taking him out in a boat where Mummy segued. Yes, well, Theodore will tell us what's wrong, said Mother. I can't find anything, organically wrong, said Theodore judiciously, rising and falling on his tiptoes. Except that he is perhaps a trifle overweight. There you are. I told you he needed a diet, said Margot triumphantly. Hush, dear, said Mother. So what do you advise, Theodore? I should keep him in bed for a day or so, said Theodore. Give him a light diet, nothing very oily, and I'll send out some medicine. That is to say, a tonic for him. I'll come out the day after tomorrow and see how he is. The Sparrow drove Theodore back to town and in due course reappeared with the medicine. I won't drink it, said Larry, eyeing the bottle askance. It looks like essence of bat's ovaries. Don't be silly, dear, said Mother, pouring some into a spoon. It will do you good. It won't. It's the same stuff as my friend Dr. Jekyll took, and look what happened to him. What happened to him? Asked Mother unthinkingly. They found him hanging from the chandelier, scratching himself and saying he was Mr. Hyde. Come on now, Larry. Stop fooling about, said Mother firmly. Who's quite right, though. I mean, you never know what adverse reactions you're going to get. You really don't. Last night was the first reasonable night. I only had to get up once with my bladder since I started putting on the antibiotic for the cyst on my back, and it's tipped me over the edge. I was up 4 or 5 times a night. The night before it was 7. It's like just the tiniest change in my biology and things go all right. But that's just me. I'm a highly sensitive person. Too many near deaths, you understand. No, you will never understand, because even I don't bloody understand it. But anyway, highly sensitive, highly attuned. But I had a better night the last night. Thank you, Holy One. It's been a bit of a rough road this week. Anyway. With much fussing, Larry was prevailed upon to take the medicine and retire to bed. That's probably why I made that mistake with the money yesterday with paying for that food, because I'm tired. I'm perpetually tired. And irritated and anxious and annoyed. But I've had a better day today, so let's calm the farm and carry on reading. Come on now, Larry, stop fooling about, said Mother. With much fussing, Larry was prevailed upon to take the medicine and retire to bed. Right, we were there. The following morning we were all woken at an inordinately early hour by roars of rage coming from Larry's room. "Mother! Mother!" he was roaring. "Come and look what you've done." We found him prancing round his room, naked, a large mirror in one hand. He turned on Mother belligerently, and she gasped at the sight of him. His face was swollen up to about twice normal size and was the approximate colour of a tomato. "What have you been doing, dear?" asked Mother faintly. "Doing? It's what you've done," he shouted, articulating with difficulty. "You and bloody Theodore and your damned medicine. It's affected my pituitary. Look at me. It's worse than Jekyll and Hyde." Mother put on her spectacles and gazed at Larry. "It looks to me as though you've got mumps," she said, puzzled. "Nonsense. That's a child's disease," said Larry impatiently. "No, it's that damned medicine of Theodore's, I tell you. It's affected my pituitary. If you don't get the antidote straight away, I shall grow into a giant." "Nonsense, dear. I'm sure it's mumps," said Mother. "And it's very funny because I'm sure you've had mumps. Let's see. Margot had measles in Darjeeling in 1920. Leslie had sprue in Rangoon. No, I'm wrong. That was 1900 in Rangoon, and you had sprue. Then Leslie had chicken pox in Bombay in 1911, or was it 12? I can't quite remember. And then you had your tonsils out in Rajputana in 1922, or it may have been 1923. I can't remember exactly. But then after that, Margot got..." "I hate to interrupt this old Moore's almanac of family ailments," said Larry coldly, "but would somebody like to send for the antidote before I get so big that I can't leave the room?" Theodore, when he appeared, agreed with Mother's diagnosis. "Yes, clearly a case of mumps," he said. "What do you mean, clearly, you charlatan?" said Larry, glaring at him from watering and swollen eyes. "Why didn't you know what it was yesterday? And anyhow, I can't get mumps. It's a child's disease." No, said Theodore. "Children generally get it, but quite often adults get it too." "Why didn't you recognise a common disease like that when you saw it?" demanded Larry. "Can't you even recognise a mump? You ought to be drummed out of the medical council, or whatever it is that they do for malpractice." "Mumps are very difficult to diagnose in the early stages," said Theodore, "until the swellings appear." "Typical of the medical profession," said Larry bitterly. "They can't even spot a disease until the patient is twice life size. It's a scandal. As long as it doesn't affect your, your lower quarters," said Theodore thoughtfully. "You should be all right in a few days." Lower quarters? Larry asked, mystified. What lower quarters? Well, you know, mumps causes swelling of the glands, explained Theodore. And so if it travels down the body and affects the glands in your lower quarters, it can be very painful indeed. You mean I'll swell up and start looking like a bull elephant? Asked Larry in horror. Yes, said Theodore, finding he could not better this description. It's a plot to make me sterile, shouted Larry. You and your bloody tincture of bat's blood. You're jealous of my virility. To say that Larry was a bad patient was putting it mildly. He had an enormous handbell by the bed which he rang incessantly for attention. And Mother had to exercise... Sorry, I read that wrongly. And Mother had to examine his nether regions about 20 times a day, because Mother exercising it would have been a fish of a different colour, you do understand. Also, the thought of it is grotesque but hilarious. Sure, no mother worth her weight in gold would be the personage to conduct such a performance. But anyway, I just read the word examine wrong, people of Earth. Let's calm our farm. We're not doing anything, discussing anything sordid here. And Mother had to examine his nether regions about 20 times a day to assure him that he was not in any way affected. When it was discovered that it was Leonora's baby that had given him mumps, he threatened to excommunicate it. I'm his godfather, he said. Why can't I excommunicate the ungrateful little bastard? Oh, the poor child. It hasn't occurred to him that the child's probably just as sick as he is too. By the fourth day, we were all beginning to feel the strain. Captain Creech then appeared to see Larry. Captain Creech, a retired mariner of lecherous habits, was Mother's bête noire, black beast. He means enemy. His determined pursuit of anything female, and Mother in particular, in spite of his 70-odd years, was a constant source of annoyance to her. I know how she feels on that one, trust me, babies. As was the captain's completely uninhibited behaviour and one-track mind. Generally a sign of dementia or some other cognitive declension, people of Earth. Disinhibited behaviours are being overly sexed. It's a great worry, actually. I witnessed it when my mother was in the Alzheimer's high care facility home. She wasn't the oversexed one, which was, by the way, unusual and great relief. But the other inmates or residents or whatever they called them were quite perturbing at times. There was the nun that used to try and nipple cripple one, In fact, succeeded on a few occasions to manage to keep my chest away from that evil hag. Bear in mind she was demented, so I don't think there was any real malice behind it, but imagine that, a nun of the Catholic faith. And there was another man who had a fabulous physique and was relatively young, only in his early 50s. Had lost his mind, I think, to Korsakoffs, that would tear all his clothes and run around completely stark raving naked. He wasn't actually trying to be an exhibitionist or expose his nether regions to anyone. He just ran around naked at every opportunity because he was out of his mind. But that was perturbing. He was hung like a horse, people of earth. I just look at it kind of a mixture of kind of admiration, but also horror. But I could see, the lights were on, but nobody was home. And he wasn't doing it to be a treat. He really wasn't. He was just completely mentally obliterated, the poor thing. And then there was a lovely couple in there who were married to other people that was so passionately in love with each other, both suffering Alzheimer's, that the carer had to sit me down and say, next week the family will be coming. Yes, you don't understand. Her husband and his wife, we have to keep them separated. They must never know what goes on here in the home. Oh, I said, I always thought they were married to each other. And she laughed and she said, no, they're married to other people and their spouses must never know. Okay, I said, I'll keep that stum for you. Oh, but the lustful behaviours almost makes me look forward to perhaps dementing myself, except the final outcome's not so cool, people of earth. I'll stick to my pristine asexual celibacy. It's not a nice way to finish off your life, being demented and lascivious and incontinent and incoherent and unable to eat food, and on it goes and on it goes. It's horrific actually to watch. Ahoy, he shouted, staggering into the bedroom, his lopsided jaw waggling, his wispy beard and hair standing on end, his rheumy eyes watering. Ahoy there, bring out your dead. Mother, who was examining Larry for the 4th time that day, straightened up and glared at him. Do you mind, Captain? She said coldly. This is supposed to be a sick room, not a bar parlour. Got you in the bedroom at last, said Creech, beaming, taking no notice of Mother's expression. He kind of reminds me of that creepy lawnmower man I had, who keeps popping up on my Instagram feed as a suggested friend, even though I blocked the bastard. Why are they putting him up as a suggested friend when that man is no friend of mine? Foul it was, foul creature. And he didn't even have Alzheimer's or dementia as an excuse. Yet. Oh, awful it was. Now, if the boy moves over, we can have a little cuddle. I'm far too busy to cuddle, thank you, said Mother frostily. Well, said the captain, seating himself on the bed. What's this namby-pamby-mumps thing you've got, huh, boy? Child stuff. If you want to be ill properly, like a man. Why, when I was your age, nothing but a dose of clap would have done for me. Captain, I would be glad if you would not reminisce in front of Jerry, said Mother firmly. It hasn't affected the old manhood, has it? Asked the captain with concern. Terrible when it gets you in the crutch. Can ruin a man's sex life. Mumps in the crutch. Larry is perfectly all right, thank you, said Mother with dignity. Talking of crutches, said the captain, have you heard about the young Hindu virgin from Kutch who kept 2 tame snakes in her crutch? She said when they wriggle, it's a bit of a giggle, but my boyfriends don't like my crutch much. Really, Captain, said Mother, outraged. I do wish you wouldn't recite poetry in front of Jerry. I got your mail when I was passing the post office, the captain went on, oblivious of Mother's strictures, pulling some letters and cards out of his pocket and tossing them onto the bed. My, they've got a nice little bit serving in there now. She'd win a prize for the best marrows in a horticultural show. But Larry was not listening. He had extracted a postcard from the mail Captain Creech had brought. Having read it, he started to laugh uproariously. What is it, dear? Asked Mother. A postcard from the Count, said Larry, wiping his eyes. Oh, him, sniffed Mother. Well, I don't want to know about him. Oh, yes, you will, said Larry. It's worth being ill just to be able to get this. I'm starting to feel better already. He picked up the postcard and read it out to us. The Count had obviously got someone to write the card for him, whose command of English was fragile but inventive. I have reaching Rome, it began. I am in clinic inflicted by disease called mumps. Have inflicted all over. I finding I cannot arrange myself. I have no hunger and impossible I am sitting. Beware yourself the mumps. Count Rosignon. A poor man, said Mother, without conviction, when we had all stopped laughing. We shouldn't laugh, really. No, said Larry. I'm going to write and ask him if Greek mumps are inferior in virulence to French mumps. And thus concludes chapter 3, The Garden of the Gods. And I shall be back, no doubt, tomorrow with chapter 4, The Elements of Spring, subtitled A Habitation of Dragons and a Court for Owls, Isaiah chapter 34, verse 13. So on that note, have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the space-time continuum on this ever spiralling, possibly clockwise, possibly Widdershins, blue marble of a planet. And today is a lovely day and the mama tea's feeling slightly better than I did yesterday, pardon me, and life goes on until it doesn't. But in the meantime, Carry on, nothing to see here. Carry on, spit, spot. And remember, as always, what do I always say? Come on, I can't hear you. And never ever let the bastards grind us down. Good afternoon.